2, 1, and we're off.
We're ready
We're
to
off
roll.
and rolling. Good evening, everybody. This is Keith and Logan coming to you from our respective houses as we social distance. And I don't like this social distancing, but when it comes to studying with Keith, I really like it. I was joking.
Really intense.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, this is pretty cool though, isn't it? I've been saying for a while we need to do a lot of classes this way.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that wants to do work on their own, I think this is hopefully a good resource.
Yeah.
To do that.
Probably should keep it up even after this whole thing ends.
I really enjoy it.
It's comfortable. It's real easy. It's real loose. So
yeah, and
works real well in that regard.
We've got no time constraints except for the ones that we place on ourselves.
Yep.
And for listeners, if you skip through and want to find certain parts, you can do that too. So we're on record. Everything that we say is on record.
Yeah.
Does that make
Love
you nervous?
being on record. Me?
Yeah.
I'm such a loudmouth that if I'm ever on record, yeah, it does make me kind of nervous, you know?
Yeah.
I don't like having things I say be on record because then it can be.
Me too. Let's stop talking about it.
Thrown back against me.
Okay. All right. So tell them what we're going to do today, Keith.
So we're going to start an overview, and don't know how long we plan on doing this, but we're going to try and go quite a bit of ways through the book of the prophets, beginning with the first chronologically of those, which would be the book of Isaiah. Can you hear me? Okay.
Major. Yeah, I can hear you. Major prophets.
First chronically of the major prophets.
And
we're going to start with the. Go ahead.
In the Hebrew Bible.
Trying to get my notes set up here.
That's okay. In the Hebrew Bible, the Joshua, Judges, Kings, and Samuel and Kings, those are considered the former prophets. So Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the 12 are considered the latter prophets. And all of the minor prophets, the 12 minor prophets, were all put into one book. And so, anyways, I'll take it. Well, okay, so this is real informal, and we're going to just go through here. A lot of this is fresh to us as well. So
it's been a while, at least.
Yeah. So
it seems like every week we kind of end up dipping into Isaiah a little bit anyway. So
yeah, and we want you to do your own study. If we miss something, which we probably will, let us know, and let us know in the comments. Might as well. Yeah. We could get some conversation going in the comments if you wanted to, or
ain't got nothing better to do.
Yeah, we'll just keep it nice down there. Keep it
nice.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, don't
nice and
flame war in the comments section. Yeah. We don't want that.
I know. Keith says a lot of messed up stuff, but I mean, let's be nice to him.
I know, and all of it's on record too.
It's on record. Okay, let's jump into it. Verse 1. You want to read that, Keith?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to set up my notes in my Bible here. I've had 30 minutes to do it. I had figured out an adequate. You only have so much table space for your mic and everything. Okay.
I know. I'm in an awkward position. I've got my Bible on my knee here, and then I've got my notebook on my other knee here.
I know, and I can't lean back in my chair, or I do what you're doing right there, where you kind of.
I'm gonna lose all feeling in my toes here in probably 20 minutes.
I think I can set my Bible up in my lap like you're doing. Okay, that's a way better system. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. Verse 2.
Let's stop there. We've got our intro.
You had 15 seconds to stop me, and you let me get all the way to verse 2 before you stopped me.
All right. So what is the entire book of Isaiah concerning?
Judah and Jerusalem.
So if we can conclude that it's concerning Judah, what are we concluding that it's not concerning? Like, who is not the audience?
Israel, the northern kingdom?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Israel had their prophets going to them, and there's going to be things in Isaiah that are relevant to them. But the message of Isaiah is for Judah and Jerusalem, which, sorry, that's my phone. Okay, we're good. Which is, I think, important because Judah is where the Davidic dynasty is.
Right.
Judah, and we talked about this last week. Judah is the royal tribe, and so if something happens to Judah, if Judah goes away, then the royal expectation is quenched. It's like a flame, and you keep that fire burning. But here we have the potential that fire is going to go out.
Right.
And if the fire goes out, then the blessing for the entire human race, all of mankind, will go out with it. So you think about the implication of the book of Isaiah on us today, in that we are the product of an individual who was born from the tribe of Judah. And if we read about things in the Old Testament where Judah, the preservation of the tribe of Judah is in danger, then us being here is now like being threatened. And of course, we know the end of the story, but it's like we've got this tension of the only reason why you and I are here talking about this in a positive light is because God preserved a nation that had no business being preserved.
Yeah. Do you ever do that where you think about the way something could have been, and even though it's not, obviously, right, because it's the past and it's already happened,
Right.
Just thinking about the way something could have gone wrong makes you kind of sweat a little bit. Interesting thoughts.
Could have gone wrong. It did go wrong, and yet here we are. It's
Right. Sure.
every step of the way. And I want to go back to this Revelation 12 idea, because in Revelation 12, God gives John the vision of the woman producing this child, and the serpent right there every step of the way trying to terminate that birth, and then trying to terminate the woman itself.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking. I think this is what we're talking about. The serpent has tried externally, and the serpent is influencing internally. And we're watching the serpent at work in the book of Isaiah. God, through the prophet Isaiah, is talking to the woman, pleading with her to not be influenced by the serpent. You might think of it that way.
Sure.
Okay, good. Let's keep moving on.
Yeah.
Another thing. Who are the
comparison.
kings? Who are the kings that we're talking about?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. So it starts in the year of the reign of Uzziah.
Okay,
Right.
Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz. Okay.
And then it's going to end in
with
Hezekiah.
So that kind of gives us a timeline. What happens in the reign of Hezekiah?
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't this at the point? No, that's Israel that gets taken up into captivity.
Yeah. So in the time of Hezekiah watches the northern kingdom go into captivity to the Assyrians, and we should note, almost go off into captivity themselves.
Hezekiah is going to be the one that finds the book of the law, right?
No.
Okay.
That's Josiah. That's going to be after. So you've got Hezekiah, Manasseh.
Manasseh does get carried off by his enemies, doesn't he?
Yeah, he sure does.
That's the one with the fetters and the
Yeah.
I remember that story. That was a bad one.
Yeah, really bad. So the northern kingdom goes off into Assyrian captivity, and so as we're reading the book of Isaiah, we might keep that we might log that away in the back of our minds. God is speaking before that. He's speaking before the northern kingdom goes off into Assyrian captivity, but he's speaking to the Jews.
Right.
I'm sorry, to Judah.
Judah, the
Um,
southern kingdom.
yeah, so they're not even the ones that go into captivity, and yet he's still speaking to them. And so it's almost like you've got Israel that's really bad that they're going out to captivity, but then you got the southern kingdom that's also really bad, but they're not going into captivity yet. That's it. That's interesting. It's not that they don't deserve it necessarily. It's that it's not happening yet. And
Yeah.
I think Hezekiah is a huge part of that. But we'll get there when we get there. Okay, keep going. Verse 2.
Verse 2.
So, well, I'll just say this. So that places our timeline somewhere in 742, 700, something like that. I had in my Bible 750, but I think that's a little too early.
That's somewhere
But
between 740 to 681.
yeah. So 750 is a little too early, but it helps me conceptualize when it is.
Yeah, sure.
So
all right. Verse 2.
Okay.
Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. Children have I reared and brought up, but they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its owner, and the donkey its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people do not understand.
All right, this verse is fantastic. Go ahead.
I was just gonna verse 4.
No.
Oh,
Too
okay.
fast. We got to slow down because these are some of my favorite verses. And the reason why is because of verse 2. Who is he talking to?
Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. Verse 2, children. So when he's talking about children, have I reared and brought up, but they've rebelled against me. Obviously, he's going to be talking about his people.
He's talking about his people, but who is he talking to?
Oh, who? Yeah, it's where he says he's talking to the heavens, right? Hear, O heavens.
Yeah.
And give ear, all of the earth.
Right. So he's doing something here. Let's see. I'm not comfortable going there right now, but there's something interesting about this because he is talking to his creation. Okay, and I think it's figurative, but it's like a dialogue that he's having with his creation. He created the heavens, he created the earth, and he's talking to them about someone else. Yeah. So he's having this dialogue. He's saying, listen to me, creation, all of creation. I want you to listen to me. I want you to notice this particular people, this particular race, nation of people. And he says, look at what I've done for them. Okay, so you think of nourishing. What is nourishing?
You asking me?
Yeah, what does it mean to nourish?
Yeah, to keep something alive, right? To make sure that they have the things required to survive.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I mean, it's like when you have a baby, it's like you nourish the baby, because if you don't nourish the baby is going to be failure to thrive, starvation. There's going to be diseases that arrive from hygiene problems. I mean, they're going to die because they can't provide for themselves. This kind of terminology, I would put this in a thematic category of where God is providing for Israel like a child, like a baby. So when we talk about children of God, okay, we fall into that description because we are children of God, but this is the kind of terminology that we need to consider. You know, Jesus talked about this too when he says, I'm the water of life, I'm the bread of life, these are elements of God giving a direct nourishment, provision, so that you can survive. So I brought up children. So he's having this conversation. As if to in other words, let's see, how can I put this into words? In other words, to say, can I get a witness? You know, can I get someone to notice how messed up this is?
Yeah,
I'm not the only one that sees this, and I think that this is figurative in the sense of his creation. But I wonder sometimes if he's not talking to mankind as well. In other words, it doesn't take a monotheist to see how messed up it is of how Judah was treating their God.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You could be a pagan. You could be an atheist. I mean, you don't have to believe in God to see how messed up it is the way that the people of God are treating God. And so I find that absolutely fascinating. And then right after that, he kind of builds on this. He solidifies this case by saying, let's look at nature. Let's look at how animals treat people. Let's look at how what's normal. Let's look at what's normal. Let's look at what's natural. You bring up an ox. You bring up a donkey. And you train the ox. You own the ox. You take care for the ox. What is the ox going to do? It's going to treat you like its master. That's what it's going to do. It's like, okay, this is instinct. This is natural for me. This is second nature for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unnatural. It's not uncomfortable even. It's very comfortable. It's very natural. And the donkey, he always knows where home is. I mean, so in other words, even if the donkey wanders off, it's like he always knows how to get back home.
Right.
So think about this for a second. This is why I love this verse. God as our Father, for a lot of people, seems such an odd thing, unnatural. Second, it's strange. It's awkward. At least that's the way they live. For example, doing the things that God wants us to do. If he's our master, it's not second nature. It's strange. But if God is our Father, how do we get to a point where that is second nature? It's not a strange thing. It's not an awkward thing. It's not an odd thing. We do what he wants us to do, and we do it willingly, naturally, organically, for the very reason that he wants us to do it. And second, even if we do wander off, that it's just perfectly natural that we return, that we come back.
I would say,
what is that? What do you hear in that? What is some relevant
so when
points?
you ask the question, how do we get to that point, right?
Yeah.
I think the idea you can look to how I'm a father of a newborn baby,
Mm-hmm.
and I've observed this with him as he's been growing old. Is that growing old is in 5 months old now, but from the beginning he didn't recognize me, right? He didn't know me. I was a blur to him, and as we've spent more time together and he's become more familiar with me, he smiles when he sees me.
Yeah.
He reaches for me. He wants me to hold him. Same with his mother, right?
Yeah.
And so a son, and that could have happened to anybody, by the way. Because if I wasn't there and another man was, he would have been in the same position with that man. That's right. Woman, or whoever is spending time with the baby. And so I think the takeaway there is that it comes with familiarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recognition, respect, love, abiding in, that comes with familiarity. And so when God says in verse 3, but Israel does not know, my people do not understand, they've become unfamiliar with their father, with their master, with their owner.
Yeah,
right?
Unfamiliar. Yeah.
Same thing with dogs and cats. You can, if you don't, like you were saying, like an animal, an ox or a donkey, if that ox or that donkey were to go away and stay away, he may not know his master when he comes back, or it may be even harder for him to fall back into the grace of his master. So just a thought there, I think, that was interesting, taking that from my own personal experience. But for us today, what does that mean? It means we have to make every effort to be familiar, to spend time.
Right. Stepping out into areas that make us uncomfortable, because those things that make us uncomfortable will soon be comfortable.
Sure.
What are some examples?
I was just about to give you one for.
Okay,
go ahead. No, you go ahead. Well, ask me what you want to say.
That was my question.
Examples of what?
something that is uncomfortable that will become comfortable
Yeah,
over
sure.
time.
So in my own personal life, I'd say, and you probably the same because we have a lot of the same hobbies, but cooking. I've recently,
Yeah.
probably in the last 6 to 8 months, I've started cooking a lot more. You can ask my wife. I do it pretty much nonstop. And when I first started cooking, it was it was really not second nature to me at all. Like you were saying, not second nature, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I felt like I was cooking with mittens on because I
Yeah.
was so incapable of doing anything properly. Things were
Right.
burned, things were undercooked.
Two
I
left
remember
hands. Just
having some guests over and I cooked a whole chicken for them and it was like basically raw when it came out because I was
yeah.
unexperienced. I didn't understand what I was doing, how I should be doing it. But as I did it, right, and I
Right.
didn't give up, I fought through that uncomfortability, through the burnt things, through the undercooked things, through the things that tasted terrible. And now
Right.
I'm half proud of some of the stuff that I can do, and that's
Yeah.
because I stuck through and I abided in the times when things seemed uncomfortable.
Yeah. I remember watching a video of Gordon Ramsay making an omelet.
Yeah.
I mean, he can talk while he's cooking because he doesn't have to think about what he's doing. He's done it
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
times. And especially with, when he's chopping the vegetables into little diced things or slices, whatever, it's like his hand is
Oh,
moving
yeah.
so fluidly. It's like, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
if I did that, I'd chop a finger off. I'd have to move very slow, and I'd have to be very careful, and which he had to do when he first started cooking. I mean, Gordon Ramsay
Yeah. Sure.
wasn't born able to cook. It's just like this idea of not being good at something and then being good at something that's something that comes with time, and God's motivator for us to get to that point with him is that he's given us everything we need. So I don't think, I think about this sometimes because I'm like, well, how do I motivate myself? How do I motivate others? It's like leading, leadership, calling someone and telling them that you're thinking about them or praying for them, leading a devotional thought, a prayer. Those are things that you may not be comfortable doing. It's like we try to go to those passages that say, well, not everybody's a hand and not everybody's a foot, not everybody's a leg and not everybody's an arm. And you say, well, I'm just not the foot. I'm just not the arm. I'm just not the leg. Well, it's like, I don't know if you can say that definitively until you've gotten good at it.
Yeah.
At least as good as you could possibly get.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I do think it's important to recognize when we're not utilizing our abilities in their best way. But
right.
yeah, no, I agree. It's like most people actually use that before they've even tried to be an arm, right?
That's right.
Tried to be a leg. They've already kind of written themselves off in that regard.
And then the question is, well, then what are you?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
like what
Most people are comfortable saying I'm not this, I'm not that, and they're not actually looking for what they are.
Yeah,
right?
what they are.
Yeah.
And so it's like familiarity with doing the will of God, comfortability with doing the will of God, even the knowledge to be able to do the will of God. Those things do not come naturally, but they become natural.
Yeah, I was terrified of speaking as a kid, which is strange to think now because I have no problem talking in front of people at all. But
Yeah.
I remember specifically the first time I ever had to talk in front of somebody. I remember it clear as day because I was probably 10 or 11 years old, maybe younger. I don't know. And my preacher, Everett Dunn, down there at Shakota Church of Christ, called me one night. He made a habit of he'd call everybody that had to do scripture reading the next day, or everybody that he would ask to do scripture reading, he'd call them the night before. And so
Yeah.
he gave me that call one night, and I absolutely dreaded it. I mean, I absolutely dreaded
Yeah.
going up there. And I did it the next day. And I was terrified, of course. But doing it that first time, and getting past it, and I stuttered and I stumbled, and
Sure.
I was a little kid, but it was probably cute to watch from the outside, but
Yeah.
it was embarrassing for me, right? And I didn't want to do it again. But I got that call a couple weeks later, and I did it again. And had he not kept calling me,
Right.
had he not kept pushing me to do it again, I probably wouldn't be here today, because it was there that I gave my first Devo. It was there that I got asked to go preach at a small church, and then eventually ended up here at Westside. So it was the persistence that led me to do it, because I certainly didn't enjoy it the first time I did it.
Sure.
Right. It wasn't something that I liked. I did not like the feeling of embarrassment or the feeling of letting people down that I got the first time I spoke in public.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did a funeral on Monday. It's like, I mean, I've
never done one of those, but I can't imagine.
It's hard. And I mean, it's difficult, because it's like, who wants
to be there?
Yeah. It's not like I don't want to do it. Like, I do, but man,
it's not just you. No one's happy to be there, right? Like, it's not something that you're already speaking to an audience that's upset. No, I understand that. And who can prepare you for something like that?
Right. You just
there's absolutely no one that can.
You know, if anybody says, well, Logan, you need to do the funeral because you went to school, it's like, okay, no, that's not how it works.
I know. Well, that's then to bring that back to, fatherhood.
Uh-huh.
No one can tell you how to do it.
Right.
It's a lot of the advice you gave me, and a lot of the advice that other people have given me has been very helpful sometimes. And, I'm appreciative of that.
Take it with a grain of salt.
It's just every situation's so fundamentally different that there's just absolutely nothing you can do to prepare for it. But you do it as you go. And the important thing is you keep doing it.
Yeah. There's no formula. There's no formula. There's no foolproof plan. And that takes away that's what makes Christianity a journey. It makes Christianity a journey of trying to figure out what you can do to further the kingdom, and then going for it.
I think we lose sight of that a lot, that it's really about self-betterment, right? It's really about honing yourself. Is it owning or honing? I always say that. I always say that H with a hard H, but
I think it is a hard H, but I'm not sure.
It's all about honing yourself, right? And no one says you have to be perfect the first time. Just like that first time you picked up a guitar, right?
Right.
And
what happens is, that improvement that we're talking about, it's right there in verse 2. That is the nourishment, and that is the bringing up. That is where God is getting you where you need to be. And God's saying, I want to do that for you. I want to give you that. I want to provide that for you. So we have to be there, willing to be guided, willing to be taught, willing to get outside of our comfort zone. And I think the promise is that the more we do that, the closer that we're going to grow to God. I really believe that.
And and to bring it back, I guess the point is that Israel has fallen out of this practice, right?
Mm-hmm,
and to the point where they don't know God.
Right. They say, and
that's sad. And that's sad, because if we're going to continue down this metaphor, and there are so many great metaphors, so many great real life analogies that we could sit here and do this all day, you and I about how this relates to our personal lives. But if we're going to,
this is my struggle as a preacher and as a teacher. It's like,
we've already hit our time limit. It's 4:00.
You read 2 verses, and then you start fleshing it out to like, wow, this has so many applications.
And you do kind of deviate, but I think if we're going to bring it all back, then the saddest comparison I can make is I remember all of the things that I've quit in my life. I remember quitting band when I was in high school, my sophomore year. I remember quitting every sport I ever quit because I wasn't good at it. I've tried to play guitar 3 times. I've tried to learn how to paint. I've tried to learn how to do certain things. I remember books, and specifically this one hurts me the worst because I'm an avid reader, but every time I've put a book down, and I still see it on my shelf every now and then. Yeah. When I have quit reading it, I didn't finish it, but I still have to look at it. There's a twinge. I get a twinge in my heart when I see that, and it makes me physically, it makes me upset with myself. Yeah. And so we can get that same feeling of Israel here, because Israel is looking at that book that they quit reading every day and making the choice to continue not to read it, right?
Yeah.
Making the choice to continue to not practice, to continue to not abide in God.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah. Tragic. It's a tragedy. Yeah. And what we're going to find from God's perspective in these prophets is the tragedy of God basically saying, what did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
And it really is a tragedy. But what is it? What is the beauty of it for us? The beauty of it for us is our relationship with God does not have to be a tragedy. It can be beautiful. It can be exactly the way he wants it to be. It can be walking with him daily, becoming more familiar with him, growing closer to him, allowing his will to manifest itself in our lives to where it's second nature and it's organic. It's something that we do naturally. That is possible. It's not impossible. And we have hope that we'll continue to grow towards that in our life. I mean, it doesn't have to be a tragedy. So.
Nope. That'll be my note there. Well, we covered 3 verses in 30 minutes. That's pretty good, don't you think?
That's not bad. We're going to get through Isaiah in about 7.5 years.
7.5 years at this rate. There's certain spots we'll be able to speed it up. What do you want to read to now? You want to just try and get a big swath of the text here, and then maybe just, or do you want to maybe get to verse 7 or 8 there?
Yeah, just start reading, and if there's something that pops up, we'll stop and do it. Okay. Let me know if you want me to read too. I don't mind doing that.
I don't mind reading.
Okay.
All right, here we go. I don't have that much to add, so. Verse 4. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, offspring of evildoers, children who deal corruptly. They have forsaken the Lord. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. They are utterly estranged.
The New King James says provoked, which I think is a very kind of a powerful image.
In place of what word? They have despised?
Yeah, to anger.
Yeah, a different image there too.
It makes me think of the don't poke the bear.
Yeah, I was about to say prodding a bear.
Yeah, prodding the bear. Like if you have got a bear in a cage, and then it's like what you need to do to make the bear angry. You poke him.
Yeah.
And then keep poking him, and then just keep pestering him and poking him. It's like, the bear's gonna get really mad, and that's what Israel's doing. It's like they know how to make God mad, and they're doing exactly the thing to make him angry.
Yeah, for sure. I know people in my life that are really good at making me angry. They know exactly what to do to make me upset.
That's right.
And that is, and that's a frustrating situation to be in.
It's not even. And here's one point that I want to make. Everyone's like, it's so easy to make God angry. It's not that really. It's that you do precisely what he has asked you not to do. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about like a whole lot. When you think of all the things.
And I think it gets drowned out a lot in what I would consider the purple prose of the Bible, right? It's poetic and it's long-winded, and most people don't understand just exactly. I hear some.
Is that my kid or yours?
My kid's not here right now, so.
Oh, okay.
And my kid doesn't sound like that. My kid's an angel. So there's some.
Screaming like that.
So it gets lost in the noise of the Bible, but it's not like Israel said, this one time, oh God, we're not going to do what you want, right? This is a repeated pattern. This is something that's been going on ever since their inception as a people, right?
Yes.
And this is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in a way.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh man, they did this one thing and God's so easily provoked, right? This is like you said, this is poking the bear and the bear not doing anything, and then poking the bear some more and keeping and poking the bear, and then maybe the bear rips your arm off and you still poke the bear.
Yeah, it really. Yeah, I mean, and he's been very merciful and gracious throughout this entire time. But they have this one thing that they do. They keep coming back to this, and the reason why I'm going to this one thing is because as you look at the examples of kings, and it's used in this context of they're provoking God to anger. Most of the time, it's talking about idolatry.
Yeah,
which. We will get to talking about idolatry. There's so much.
Yeah, we talked about the book of Judges last week, and that is just almost exactly what the problem was that they were turning to these foreign gods, and there's more to it than just I'm a jealous God. These foreign gods could not Israel could not abide with these foreign gods and consider themselves morally upright people, right? These were foreign gods that partook in child sacrifice
That's right.
and all
Yes.
sorts of
It's like
tainted, perverse
we're
practices that I'm
we're
not going to
talking
talk about in mixed company.
No, I mean seriously. I mean, I've read some stuff about, like, for example, the Canaanites. It's stuff that you wouldn't find in some of the worst horror stories. It's like and to them, from their perspective, if you were a citizen in that particular place, that was considered to be good. You know, and they defined it that way.
And you're talking about just from a just perspective, from a perspective of like, a justice. Even an onlooker that's not religious, that's not an Israelite, would
That's
say,
right.
now that's pretty messed up.
And that's what I think God is
How
doing
could these
here.
How could these people associate with him? Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's what
So
God's doing
it's
here.
not just
Listen, mankind.
Yeah,
Pay attention, mankind. Watch what this has happened. Not only are they not doing what I asked them to do, but they're some of the worst people in the entire world. I mean, measure them up with the Assyrians and the Egyptians and all of these other foreign nations. Put them up there and notice how perverted it is. They're definitely not holy. They're definitely not set apart. There's one thing that I thought about when you were saying that too, that I think we get this. It's the idea that you've done something. Okay, think back at something that you've done. It was really special, and you're really proud of it, and you produced it. For example, I don't know. Think of something. Can you think of an example of something that you're like, okay, I did that and I was proud of that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've throughout my high school career, I won a lot of competitions in academic, or I've done a lot of artwork. I've done a lot of art that by the time
take your academics. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the highest achievement that you earned in academics?
Yeah, I won a high school state championship my junior year.
Okay. Was that just you, or was that with you and other people?
Yeah, I mean a team of guys.
Okay. How many people?
I think there were 6 of us on the team, but only 4 play at a time. So yeah, it was like a 4-man team type.
Okay, so you've got 6 people that received this award for academics, and you go to receive the reward, and they give it to everybody but you.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a second, I was a part of that as well. Like I put in effort, I worked for it, I did a lot in this team, so why aren't I getting any credit for what I've done?
Yeah.
I think we know what that feels like. It's like you do something big, and it's you don't want to say that you.
It would be like the equivalent of graduating high school, and me graduating high school, and in my graduation speech thanking just my mom and not my dad for all that he contributed to my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I've got my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my siblings, everyone there that supports me, and I think literally just one person.
That's right.
Or I think, or more apt, I think everybody but my mom. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So imagine this. Yeah. I want to thank my grandma, my grandpa. I want to thank my brother, my sister,
my neighbor,
the
guy that owns the gas station that I visit a lot.
My best friend. We've been friends for 3 years, like forever.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't mention your mom. It's like, is she going to be hurt? Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, she birthed you. She brought you into the world. I mean, she changed your diapers. I think we're getting on to what we're talking about here. God's saying, I brought you up. I nurtured you. I did everything. And you want to give credit for everything that I did to some rocks, some carved rocks, and some metal work, and some pieces of, a statue. It's like, okay, that's really low. I mean, we get that. It's like, I think a lot of people in the world are like, oh, he's so petty. This isn't pettiness.
It's not just that, and it's not just that they're giving credit to those rocks, but it's also what they're doing in the name of those rocks.
Yeah. It's like, don't act like you don't understand where God's coming from. We know where God's coming from. We're talking about a God who created the world and everything in it, and everything good that's in your life. He gave it to you, and you're not giving him any credit for it. Like, we get that. Come on. And it's we do that today. I mean, I do it. I mean, I'm not just trying to throw people under the bus. I do it. Like, we do it all the time. We may do it on a daily basis. It's when we don't give him credit for all the good that we have in our life. Or, and I think I said this in a sermon one time, it's like I am wading through the blessings of God every single day of my life, but I can't take time out of my busy week that's so filled with his blessings to worship him. That's the tragedy right there. You want to talk about the tragedy of the book of Isaiah, it's the tragedy in our own life. And that's it. That's it. There's the application as I see it. Okay, let's keep going.
Verse 5. Why will you be struck down? Why will you continue to rebel? The whole head is sick and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, but bruises and sores and raw wounds. They are not pressed out or bound up or softened with oil.
Okay, I love that verse 5, because as a parent, you think about that. I think about that. I don't like disciplining. Okay, I'm just not. I don't know. Maybe there's parents out there that love doing it. I hope not, but I hate doing it. And so anytime that my kid does something to where he needs to be disciplined, I just hate it. And I often I'll say a prayer and I'll say, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. But I have to. But afterwards, I talk to him and I say, or I'll say before, I'll say, please don't make me do this. Please don't make me have to discipline you. For example, I'll be putting them down to sleep, and they're not being quiet or whatever. It's like, if you keep not going to sleep, or if you keep being loud, or not being quiet, I've got to discipline you. Like, it's my job. I've got to do it. Please don't make me do it. Yeah. I really don't want to do it, so please don't make me do it. And I think this is what God is saying. Why do you need, let's see, how does he say it? Why should you be stricken?
Why will you continue to rebel? Yep.
It's like, why do you need to suffer? Why do you need to suffer more? Why do you need to keep making yourself suffer? Why do you need to keep doing this to yourself? It's like, and when God says that, what is he saying? What's the implication? I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. It's like you're making it to where I have to do it, but why do you even have to get to that point where I have to do it?
Yeah, I'm reminded of my childhood. Is probably not something I should tell people, but I think it's funny. Do you remember the movie Superman 2? The one with General Zod. It's the old one. The old one.
Oh, the old one. Yeah.
There's this part in Superman 2 where someone punches General Zod and he goes, "Why would you do that when you know I will kill you for it?" Anytime me and my brothers would mess with my dad, that's what he'd say to us all the time. That's just what this verse reminded me of. Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Listen, I don't want to have to kill you.
And that was how we were as kids, though, because we'd mess with our dad, and we knew he could take us, sure. But we still did it anyway. Why did we do that? And that's the logic of a child. And I think that's continuing the logic. That's continuing the children metaphor there, mm-hmm. Right? And why will you continue to rebel? And then he gives this description, right?
The child theme, the provoking theme.
Yeah. And then he gives this description of Israel as a sick body, right?
Yeah.
And not any part of it as well.
Right. Which tie that in with John chapter 5, when Jesus is standing by the man at the pool, and when he asks him this question, he says, "Do you want to be made well?" I think that really, I really think that brings that all together. It's like you're talking about people that aren't well. The question is, do you want to be made well?
And the answer is no, they don't.
They don't.
Or they don't act like it.
Which is why that was such a profound question that Jesus asked, because some people just don't.
And that's a weird question to think about. And there's a lot of application for that in our daily lives, because not just with real sick people, but I've seen people whose lives are falling apart, who are in some stuff that they know they shouldn't be in. And they ask, why am I in this? Why is this happening? And it keeps happening. And the question that one begs is, do you even want to get better? Right. Do you want your life to not be in this state? And I think most people would say yes, but are most people acting like they want their lives to get better? Are most people living like they want their lives to get better? Sometimes not. Yeah. Israel in this case is definitely not. I keep dropping something. I need to quit dropping it.
And the words that he uses there, which are very poetic. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, yeah.
Why don't you read ahead and I will go see if make sure people aren't dying here.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, sorry about that.
Good.
I don't think anybody's.
We
dying.
got about 10 minutes. I think an hour would be probably good there. You want
Okay,
to try and run down through verse 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just gonna say that they have not. When he uses his words like they have not been closed or bound up or soothed with ointment, it's like it's not that they can't heal.
Yeah, it's that they haven't tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Your country, verse 7. Your country lies desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. In your very presence, foreigners devour your land. It is desolate as overthrown by foreigners. And the daughter of Zion is left like a booth in a vineyard, like a lodge in a cucumber field, like a besieged city. I want some of the historical context on some of this stuff. Those last 2 or 3 metaphors there are kind of lost on me. I don't really understand what he's saying. Right? So he's going to say, your country lies desolate, your cities are burned with fire, in your very presence, foreigners devour your land. It is desolate as overthrown by foreigners, right? That makes a lot of sense to us. That's pretty easy to interpret, right? These, they're being taken over. Verse 8, and the daughter of Zion is left like a booth in a vineyard. What does that mean?
I think the booth is kind of like a
tent?
Maybe like a shelter.
Okay.
Something that she's because he does it again there as a hut.
Like a lodge in a cucumber field.
Yeah.
That's a weird analogy to me. I'm not quite catching on.
A besieged city, I think, is what he's kind of getting at there. I think that.
I guess those things are plants that grow relatively low to the ground, right? And a booth or a lodge, those are going to be things that stick up in the middle of something like desolation, right? So, I think what he's signifying is that they're standing out, right, and not in a good way. I don't know though. That's what I would take from that.
Now, the daughter of Zion is an interesting term because that's going to come up more and more. So that might be something thematically that we can keep in the back of our minds or make a note of, because I think we're going to see that term again. I don't know. I'm going to have to study that more.
Verse 9. No, go ahead. I was just going to move on.
Yeah.
Verse 9. If the Lord of hosts had not left us a few survivors, we should have been like Sodom and become like Gomorrah. Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the teaching of our God, you people of Gomorrah. What to me is the multitude of your sacrifices, says the Lord. I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of well-fed beasts. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of goats.
So let's stop there for a second. So Sodom and Gomorrah, obviously what happened to them. They were destroyed. If there was not a remnant, then there would have been destruction. I think that's going to be what our explanation is in verse 8. It's going to be remnant terminology, which remnant terminology is also going to be a thematic thing throughout the book. So that might be another note that we make. They are not being made like Sodom, though when we get to verse 10, they are like Sodom.
Yeah.
And Gomorrah.
So when you look at the booth in the vineyard or the lodge in a cucumber field, you're talking about one left standing, right? So there's Is that what you're suggesting? Is that it's like it's a remnant, right?
Yeah, I think it might have something to do with remnant terminology. I'm not sure how yet. That's something that we can study some more. But I think that the point is, we've got in verse 10, are they really as bad as Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah, and we get to verse 11, and that's interesting. That's an interesting thought too, because as I'm reading this, and he says, what to me is the multitude of your sacrifices. I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams, the fat of well-fed beasts. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of goats. And if you don't understand what's going on, I think you're going to say, well, that's what you asked him to do. What do you mean you don't delight in those things? Right, but the answer is that they're meaningless.
Or what you will take from that is that they didn't matter to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the letter of the law, the actual obligations within the law. What God's trying to say is, I didn't want you to actually do what those obligations said.
No, and what he's saying to me is, what is the multitude of your sacrifices, right? He's saying these things are meaningless because of the way you are, right? You're not doing it in the right spirit. So I think an apt example would be when I try to help my wife, when she asks me to do something, right?
Yeah.
She asks me to clean the house. And I go out and I buy her some shoes.
Yeah.
And I make dinner, and I go and I get her car cleaned.
Mm.
And she comes back and she says, the house isn't cleaned. I say, yeah, but I bought you some shoes and I made you dinner and I cleaned your car. And she says, yeah, but I asked you to clean the house.
Yeah, that's not what she wanted.
What good are those things? You know what I mean?
Right. Or if you, for example, if you were to say, like, to your wife, I love you forever and you're going to be the only person I ever love, but then you go out and you have, dinner with another woman every day of the week or something. It's like, or you have an affair. It's like, okay, your words and your
actions aren't lining up there.
They're not lining up, and it makes, so when you say I love you, it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
So why are you saying it?
Yeah.
It's like when you worship God, what you're saying is you're appealing to his forgiveness, you're appealing to his, and you're saying, God, you are, the Shema, there is heroes of the Lord your God is one. You don't believe that. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and your strength. You don't do that.
And there's a pretty clear application for us today. Right?
I mean, I think that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah,
exactly.
Go ahead. Well,
it's just showing up at worship and not living a life that's conducive to a worshipful, existence.
So what is he saying to that worshiper, that Christian that says one thing but lives another? What is he saying to them? If we take what he's saying to them here, what is he saying to the Christian that does that?
What is the multitude of your worship, right? It's worthless to me.
In other words,
I don't delight in it.
He's almost saying, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he's saying? And of course, we don't want to tell people don't come to church. but God is pretty much saying, if you're going to live that way, don't worship me. Boy. Sit on that for a while. That's some extreme stuff.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to hear.
Yeah, sure is. Now we need to move on, because he gets into the solution to that. He's not saying never worship me. He's saying do something before you worship me. So let's keep going.
Verse 12, when you come to appear before me, who has required of you this trampling of my courts? Bring no more vain offerings. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath and the calling of convocations. I cannot endure iniquity and solemn assembly. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hates. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean.
Okay. Stop before verse 16.
For sure.
So the hands is what the Hebrews actually did when they prayed. And so you can see that in 1 Timothy chapter 2, when he says, I
Yeah,
want men in every place to pray, lifting up holy hands in prayer. That's
and
that's a Hebrewism.
I definitely think we should go to at least verse 20 here, because I think that would be a good natural stopping place there. But this is just, so he's going to continue to talk about these things that are sacred to the Jewish tradition, right? He's going to continue. Who, when you come before me, has required? Okay, so this is an interesting question he's asking. Who, when you come before me, has required of you this trampling of my courts? Because it wasn't me. I wasn't the one that asked you to do that.
I
Who
didn't
was
ask
the
you
one
to
that
do
asked
that.
you to do that?
Right.
And then this is going to be the thing that if you were thinking, God asked these people to do this, why is he saying this? Bring no more vain offerings, right? It's about vain offerings. Bring no more vain offerings. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath and the calling of convocations. These are all very holy things, right? These are all sacred things that even I think a lot of, this is an interesting thing because I think it gets into life today is like, but even to people that weren't living as Jews, they were still doing these things, right? Because they're so sacred to their tradition.
Right.
It's the equivalent of atheists, modern day atheists, still going to Christmas Mass or something, right? Because their family is so traditionally Catholic that it would be unfathomable not to, right? And he's taking these sacred things to them and he's spitting on them.
Yeah.
I cannot endure iniquity in solemn assembly. It doesn't matter what you do. I can't endure it.
I think that's a perfect example because we could be talking about that. Generations of people that are doing it because their grandparents want them to do it.
Yeah, sure. Of
course,
your new moon,
that has no application for today, does it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's been the general trend.
I think that's the struggle for third generation Christians. I mean, isn't it? I mean, it's not fresh. It's not new because it's like, oh, I'm just doing what my grandparents did.
This is one of the toughest ones. This is one of the toughest topics I think for you and I to get into, because I genuinely feel like our experiences are so removed from this that it's hard for us to relate. Because both you and I know personally, maybe not you so much. I don't know how your younger years went, but I remember specifically wanting to get my driver's license as a kid so that I could drive to church by myself, so that people would know I was coming on my own volition, not because my parents made me. So that mindset was never one I really had. I was never doing anything because my parents made me. Maybe if I went to a youth function that I really didn't want to go to, or a church function that I really didn't want to go to, it was because my mom made me. But for the most part, I was there because I enjoyed it and I wanted to be there. So, and I think you're the same way, at least from what you've told me, it seems like you are. And so it's tough for me to relate to the idea of only doing something because tradition dictates it, right?
Right.
And it's interesting because God uses some pretty harsh terminology here, right? My soul hates it.
Yeah, he hates it. Yeah.
Go ahead. Or do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think that you've got to get to a point in your faith where you say, you're understanding the reason that you're doing it. It has to be your relationship with God, and it has to be your faith. And
that comes back to what we were talking about in verse 2.
Yeah,
this is really interesting concept to me in ministry.
It's perfect because when we get into the next verses, it's like he's explaining what the donkey does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. And this is interesting to me because when we get into ministering to youth, you have some kids that are there, and if any of the kids are listening to this, we've talked about this before, so this isn't going to be anything they haven't heard, but we have some kids that are there because their parents have made them go their whole lives. But I have these kids, and I've had them throughout the past. Some have come and gone off to school and whatnot, but that have come because a friend invited them and then stayed long after the friend didn't come.
Yeah.
Right. And those are the most interesting kids to me, because as a kid, there was nothing you could have done to get me to go to a different church with you. As a friend, I loved all my friends. There was nothing they could have done. I went maybe once or twice to a friend of mine's church, and I hated the experience so bad I never would have gone to a different one. Much less got me to stay there after that person that I knew was gone. And so I have a lot of respect for those kids, and I have a lot of respect for those people that are in that situation, because I know that that's a tough thing to do, to break that comfort zone like you're talking about, and to break that, that awkwardness and stick around.
Right.
and the
Yeah.
opposite can be said of the people that have left. I mean, not that I don't have respect for them, but it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get that.
I think that, we don't have time to do this, but I think that we honestly need to take a very serious look at all 5 acts of worship. Each individual, as an individual, you need to look very seriously at all 5 acts of worship.
Yeah.
I mean, has this become so applicable? I mean, is this applicable to you? I think it is. It's applicable to me because it's like, okay, so let's look at them singing. Has my singing become, has it become just something that my heart's just not into? Like, am I just doing it? Like, am I really doing it for the right reasons and the way that God wants me to do it? Giving is another one, especially during this
right now.
Yeah. It's like, man, it's, by the way, I mean, the church, for the church to continue to function, it is absolutely vital that the kingdom of God is funded.
Yeah, we're not like Osteen or whatever. We don't have a trust fund set up for us to keep us running in times like this.
Yeah, and so it's extremely important. It's extremely vital. It's extremely important for every member of the church is to grow in their faith and loyalty to God right now, so that when we can get back into the building, that we're all full force.
That's going to be an interesting experience, by the way, I think, because that's
Yeah,
something that
I think everybody's thinking about it.
Probably no person living today has had to, as long as they've started going to church, has had to stop going to church for any reason other than they just didn't go to church, right? For especially for a serious amount of time. The only time I can think is maybe the ice storms back in 2008. I don't know if you guys got those out in Edmond, maybe 2006 to 2008. Can't remember which year it happened. We had some real bad ice storms back then, and I think maybe we missed probably 2 weeks of church because of it. I mean, power out all across the state.
Yeah.
And we missed 2 weeks of church, and that was weird. But this will be strange to see. How does this affect what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
How is this gonna make us more or less involved?
Right.
Are we gonna? Is this the type of thing that most people say? I really miss that.
Yeah.
I know that I get
in the, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I get in the humdrum routine of things as bad as anybody, especially working at a church. It can really make you you start to take things for granted.
Yeah.
Meeting on Sunday and whatnot. You dread them, and I do. I've dreaded many times waking up on Sunday morning, and that's just a fact. I'm not. I'm sorry if you think I shouldn't feel that way, but I do. I've dreaded it. And I've at certain points in the past I've missed it because especially recently, because it's a part of your life that's not there anymore. And so things like this can either let you slip into your worst self or can really make you your best self.
Sure.
So just something to think about.
Yeah, and I think that Christianity is not situational. It's not liturgical. I think that's a word. If, in other words, there isn't a hierarchical spiritual structure. You might say, well, what about elders and what about deacons? It's still not. Those are responsibilities that people in the church have, but it isn't a hierarchy.
Yeah.
We read about it in the Bible. We read about it in Deuteronomy 17 with the king. It's like you've got mankind, and then you've got God, and that's it. That's the dynamic there. So that is the Christian dynamic. There is no liturgical structure. There is no situational. It's not situational. In other words, you can be sitting in a prison cell and be worshiping God like Paul did. And you can be in a quarantine and worship God. I mean, it is perfectly acceptable worship, and it's perfectly okay.
But it can be more difficult.
It can be more difficult, and it can be non-ideal. But I think that's where these passages are so important, because maybe worship for you is harder now than it is at the building, but these verses of God and what he wants and expects from your worship are just as important now as they've ever been.
Sure.
So when you worship God in your home, do you put in the same amount? Maybe not the same amount, depending on how much you put in when we were at the building, but do you put in as much effort as you possibly can every time you worship God?
Yeah, it's a question to ask yourself constantly.
Tell them what they need to do if they don't, as we all don't often, beginning in verse 16.
Yeah. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean, remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes. Cease to do evil, learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, plead the widow's cause.
Okay, so I asked the question.
Cool sentence there. Go ahead.
Yeah, very cool. I asked the question. All right. How do I become morally clean?
Sorry, something dropped in my room. Yeah. And
number one,
we've got a list of things, right? And the first on that list, wash yourselves. And it's worth noting.
No. Well, hold on.
Make yourselves clean.
Yeah, wash yourselves, make yourself clean. How do I wash myself and how do I make myself clean? Number one is what?
Remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes. Is that what you're talking about?
So the first, yeah, exactly. So the first thing that happens
cease to do evil.
Behavioral, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you and I have to change in our behavior, where we remove those elements of our conduct that is considered immoral. And he gets, I think, even more specific with that. But conduct and behavior is essential to an individual's purity. What's number two?
Learn to do good.
Okay. Yes. So this is something that is education. I think this goes back to what we were kind of trying to hint at in verse 2 and 3. I think this is something that you have to learn. And you're like, I don't know how to do it. Yeah, of course you don't. It's like you expect to just know how to do it without learning how to do it.
Yeah. I'm a terrible studier in school, and I constantly ask myself, why do I have such bad grades? I don't know how to study. Well, yeah, I don't know how to study. I've never sat down and tried for more than 10 minutes in my life, you know?
Let me ask you a question. What does the word disciple mean?
A follower.
What else?
You know how I know we've been doing this too long?
Yeah, my battery is going out. I'm getting
a red blinking battery logo.
It's saying close, but
wrap it up. We're almost done. Keep going.
I want to say this. Actually, we'll start with this verse next time. What does disciple mean? Follower. Okay, but what are the implications of that? Just to follow? Like, what are you trying to do in your following?
Emulate behavior.
Okay, emulating behavior. Okay, so what do you have to do in order to emulate behavior?
You have to know the behavior. You have to study the behavior.
You watch it. You observe it. You have to learn
to live the behavior.
You have to learn the behavior in order to live the behavior.
The behavior.
Right? So you follow in order to observe, and through observation, you are learning. So not only are you observing as a disciple, but what else are you doing?
You're doing as a disciple.
Okay. What else?
You are teaching as a disciple. You are.
Now let's think of it in the context of the disciples of Christ.
Right. Sure.
So they're following him around, observing. What else are they doing?
They're listening to his teachings.
Okay. So through listening, they are learning. And so what do you call people that are learning? Students. Okay, so students are technically learners, right? So what is a disciple?
Student.
A learner. Yeah, a learner, one who learns.
Yeah.
You say, if you're ever talking to a Christian that says, I don't want to learn anything new, guess what? They're not a Christian. You know what I mean? It's like it's just by definition, you're not a disciple.
Yeah.
You need to become one. You need to become a disciple. You say, I've been a Christian for 40 years.
You need to learn how to learn.
Yeah, you need to learn how to
learn. And that's tough to do.
Yeah, it is. It is. You say, I've been a Christian for 40 years. Well,
those sentences are easy to say, but
that's right.
It can be tough to do, and I'm not taking that away from anybody, but it's something that everyone has to do.
let's close this out, Keith.
Sure.
Tell them what they need to know, and we'll start here next time.
Sure, and I've neglected my notes here in this last passage, but we've got.
That's okay. I got so much into it.
In summary of Isaiah chapter 1, and we'll pick up with verse 16 next time. I guess we'll start back there with that little list of actions.
Yeah.
In summary of Isaiah chapter 1, we've got that the book is concerning Judah. Right? Not necessarily talking to the northern kingdom here. We're talking to Judah and Jerusalem, and that's important because that's going to be where Jesus comes from. That's the Davidic line, right?
Yeah.
The kings it takes place under are going to be Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. God is speaking to his creation. God is speaking to all of his creation, whom he created and he nourished and he took care of. I got on an interesting note here.
The people of God he nourished and took care of.
Yeah, right.
And he's telling them, look what I did. Yeah, good.
Yeah. Look what I did. What did I do to deserve this? And they've turned their back on him, and then some. They had failed to credit God, right?
That's right.
And as a result, they were suffering desolation.
That's right. He's saying, why do you have to suffer?
Right. And so
which is the same for us. But keep going.
A couple of points that I got here that are applicable to us from all of this are: our walk doesn't have to be a tragedy. That was something you said that I took as a note. Our walk doesn't have to be a tragedy, and meaningless worship is meaningless, and that's for brevity. I wrote that for brevity, but meaningless worship is useless to God, right?
Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do in order to, at least we've only looked at a couple. So what do you do if you're struggling with vain or empty worship?
Yeah, and so you've got to wash yourself. You've got to.
Well, that's
you got to change your behavior. You got to change your behavior.
Wash yourself is the answer, but how do you wash yourself?
Yeah, sure. So it's all in changing the behavior, cease to do evil, and learn to do good.
Yeah, learning. Okay, good. All right, we'll start there next time. I hope if you've been with us this long, then thank you. I hope
about an hour. That wasn't too bad.
Not too bad. I've enjoyed it. I could do this every week. I could do this every day, but that's just me. But this battery is going out. So, all right.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Let me get